Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we'll get started with the meeting tonight. Thank you for coming. We do appreciate it. We'll start with the invocation by Pastor Brad Riley from Faith Chapel, Assembly of God in O'Fallon, and then Mike Klinghammer will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. Sorry my 10-year-old wasn't able to make it this time. Upward basketball kind of bumped us this evening, so she'll join me next time. Heavenly Father, I thank you that we live in a county where a 14-year-old boy was resurrected from the dead 3 weeks ago. After being dead for 45 minutes, it's blowing up on national media, showing us that miracles still happen. And I thank you that we can believe in the miraculous. I thank you for our leaders. I thank you for the way that they watch out for us. They bless us. I ask that our county will be a place of peace, a place of hope, a place of life, that it would be the model county for this country, that people will look this direction to find out what a little bit of heaven on earth really is. I ask that your blessing would be upon this meeting tonight. Your word says, blessed are the peacemakers. We recognize that peace doesn't just happen, peace is made. No wonder they need an extra blessing. So I ask that you'll give them that tonight. And I just ask in the name of Jesus that your kingdom would really come and your will truly would be done on earth just like it is in heaven. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor. That was very nice. Roll call.
Councilmember Joe Cronin.
Are we supposed to hear him? Jack?
I'm here.
Okay, there you go, Joe. Yeah.
Councilmember Dave Hammond. Councilmember Mike Elam.
Here.
Councilmember Joe Brazel.
Here.
Councilmember Terry Hollander.
Here.
Councilmember Mike Klinghammer.
Here.
Councilmember John White.
Here.
Okay, now we'll move on to public comments. Is there anybody in the audience who'd like to speak about any government business or any business that's on the agenda or not on the agenda? We allow 3 minutes per speaker, 3 speakers per subject, pro and con. Yes, sir.
I'm Steve Marion with Premier Civil Engineering. You guys have seen me a couple times. I'm here with the LMC subdivision plat on Highway Inn and Duello. Would you guys like for me to talk about it now or when we get to that on the agenda?
You can. We'll bring it up on the bill, and if there's any questions, we'll know you're here, and we'll have you come up and we'll ask you at that time.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other speakers? Are there any? Hold on. Is there any speakers on that subject? Okay, Mr. Dienoff.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the County Council, A.C. Dienoff, County Resident and Public Advocate. The bid for the election services is, in my opinion, hogwash. I was upset with the bid process a year and a half ago from the get-go in purchasing millions of dollars in voting machines and only allowed for proprietary sole source bid, which ensures only one vendor can bid with no fair and open competition. It was a shame then and it's a shame today. It's a shame for taxpayers why somebody gets rich off of our county. The letter to the county stated in your packet that the franchise with Unison is territorial. It is unbelievable that someone allowed Rich Krismer, the election authority director, to create and write a single bid equipment process. Has anyone ever thought about bringing all the services and doing them in-house, such as Boone County, such as St. Louis County, such as Greene County, Missouri? How dare we screw up yet another debacle, another heartache, another scam to deceive and rip us off as taxpayers? This is nothing but highway robbery at an unlimited trough, taking advantage of the unlimited financial resources at the helm for disposal to political donors. No effort is ever given to negotiations whatsoever in this contract for election services or the ballots that we purchase. I'd like to talk about the appointments of key county personnel to boards and commissions. It's on your agenda tonight. We are appointing directors of key departments to county commissions when we have a wealth of knowledge and professional people among our 400,000 county residents. Are these the Assistant Director of Administration, the Police Chief, and the Health Department Director? Are they rubber stampers, directors, that will automatically shake their head yes as they are told on how to vote? In this case, it's on the Housing Assistance Commission. More importantly, this is a conflict of interest, possible violation of our county home rule charter and Missouri state statutes. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't have people making over $100,000 while being on appointed boards and commissions when we have a wealth of talent out in our communities that make up St. Charles County. I've been asking and requesting to serve on a commission to be great assistance to my county, and it goes on deaf ears. Election irregularities. There will be a trial held on Monday, February 23rd, 2015, at 9 o'clock a.m. on the third floor of the Circuit Courts building, where errors from the election authority caused problems in the April 7th results. This will be held in front of a judge that was appointed by the Missouri Supreme Court, because all the judges here in St. Charles County properly and did the professional thing by recusing themselves in this matter. I encourage the community to be involved in this process to ensure fair, transparent, and open elections and to stop the cover-up of wrongdoing. Thank you very much.
Are there any other speakers who'd like to talk tonight? All right, seeing none, moving to the oral report from the county executive.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit tonight about powers of the county charter and the powers that you have under that charter, and more importantly, the powers that the people have under that charter. And I want to start off just by talking, first of all, about the 10th Amendment. We've all heard a lot about that lately. The U.S. Constitution says the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution or prohibited to it by the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. So the federal government only has those powers the state has granted it. The rest are reserved to the state. And then, of course, the state has gone ahead and, through its Constitution, given some of those powers to the legislative branch in the General Assembly, and has also given some powers directly to the people. And you can see here, if you look at section 15 first, the General Assembly provided by general laws shall provide for the organization and classification of cities and towns. The only requirement is that those cities and towns within a particular classification have the same powers. There's no requirement that they have any powers at all. Powers they do have are the ones granted to them by the General Assembly. Now, with regard to the county on Section 8, again, the General Assembly can provide for the organization of counties, except as provided in Section 18A and Section 18M. Now, what do those say? Any county having more than 85,000 inhabitants may frame and adopt a charter for its own government as provided in this article. Section 18C says the charter may provide for the vesting and exercise of legislative power pertaining to any and all services and functions of any municipality or political subdivision, including us, except school districts. Now, when we adopted our charter, almost 20 years ago now, one of the things in the charter was a provision which said that the county could not intervene in lawsuits involving annexation, or could not intervene in the annexation process, which required a lawsuit. If you remember, at that time, this was a power that the county had always had, that every other county in the state had. It was well recognized in law that we had the right to intervene, but the charter, adopted by the people, said, no, you're not going to have the power to intervene. The county, however, did not file a lawsuit. We lived with that as long as we could until, about 10 years ago, when we actually went to the people and asked them to change that provision so that we, like every other county, could intervene in the annexation process. Now, what happened in the meantime? Well, let me come back. You can see here that in the meantime, the incorporation process became very, very convoluted. It's because under the statutes, the city had certain rights. The county now had no rights. And the residents, of course, had a right. Back in 1890, I was in the House when Joe Artworth offered the amendment, which we adopted, which basically said if the city's going to annex something, the people in the area to be annexed had to vote in favor of it. Before that, going back 100 years ago, cities could annex whenever they wanted to. And nobody complained because the cities were the only place you could get sewer and water or other utilities. Everybody wanted that. It always improved their property values. But by the 1960s and 70s, you had other ways to get those sewer, water, and other utilities from private companies, from Duckett Creek, from a whole variety of things. So it no longer became necessary to be in a city. But cities still wanted to annex territory. And for a long time, they were able to do that by holding an election in the area to be annexed. If they didn't get a majority, then they could hold an election in the entire city. And if they got 2/3, they could force the people to come in. That was changed by the legislature. But of course, in the process, you can see some really strange configurations here in the cities. I'm going to ask you to look at the first of these on the left and do you know what city that is? If you said St. Charles, you're right. Then look on the next one over. You know which city that is?
Winsville?
You're right. How about the one on the left?
Is that O'Fallon?
No.
St. Peter's. I
Anybody?
think O'Fallon's on the right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Fallon's on the right, it's on the left.
Lake St. Louis?
No. Got a half right, or third right. St. Peter's. Okay, and then on the right, we do have O'Fallon.
Yeah.
Okay, how about that one?
And Darden Prairie?
Huh?
Darden Prairie?
Yeah.
Good.
Congratulations. And the next one?
I would guess St. Peter's. No, we don't. No, we've already had that. So
Already had that.
that would be Lake St. Louis then.
No?
No?
Forestdale?
No?
Cottleville. Of course
Okay.
it's Cottleville.
All right, and of course, they look like this because while the cities were not able to annex areas that didn't want to be annexed where residents lived, if nobody lived there, they could annex an area because nobody lived there to vote no. So what you had is annexation of businesses, okay, but not of residential areas. I simply bring this up because this is an example where the General Assembly had powers. It could do whatever it wanted to, but it basically turned it over to the people and said, hey, you decide. We're not going to make you come into a city if you don't want to come into the city. Let me go back here and talk a little bit about, here's an example. The citizens really don't have much to say. Public health. We got the county, the state, the federal governments all involved in county health. This has become more of an issue here since we had the Ebola scare and everything. But basically, the county health department is the entity that deals with public health in St. Charles County, okay, under statute. We are in charge of public health until the governor declares an emergency, in which case then the state would be in charge of public health emergencies in St. Charles County. There's a lot of federal agencies out there, but they have no direct authority. The CDC and people like that, Center for Disease Control, are there to offer advice. But basically, this is a county responsibility until the state decides to take it over. I asked our people once, well, what would happen if the state took it over? They said nothing, because the state really doesn't have any more ability in this area that a county like ours has. Okay. How about cities versus taxing districts? And of course, we've talked about this before. Tax subsidies, who decides? This is, I think, of course, a problem in that cities have been empowered by the General Assembly to basically control the future revenue of other taxing districts. Again, this is something, if we want to change it, we have to go to the General Assembly. They have basically taken it away from the vote of the people. In our case, they've taken it away from us and given it to a city. This can be varying degrees of injustice here. I think this is one of the most extreme examples. In the blue there, you see St. Peter's. And in the hatched area, you see the school district of the city of St. Charles. In the 370 development, you had a situation where the representatives elected by the people in St. Peter's determined the future of the revenue collected by the city of St. Charles School District. Probably about 5% of the people who pay taxes to the St. Charles School District actually live in St. Peter's and have an opportunity to vote for the people who control the future of those revenues. I mean, obviously it's an example which we don't like, but again, to change it, we would have to go to Jefferson City. Transportation, I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. Most of you know that there are state, county, and city systems. You know, the state is the interstates, the county, we have the road board. There's city systems out there as well. People drive around the county. They're not really sure which one they're on because they're all interconnected. But here's an interesting number here. You can see, John Greifs, who put this together for me, you can kind of see where what the new bridge is doing. It's moved to number 2 after the Blanchette Bridge, but it's still only have half as many people as the I-70 bridge and the I-70 corridor. You can see that there's been a lot more traffic on page.
Do you have a handout of that by any chance?
Pardon me?
Do you have a handout of that?
Yeah, we can get that for you.
That'd be great.
We can get any of this for you. Now, even though there's 3 different systems, we have cooperative efforts. We have the county working with the cities for various road board projects here. You can see the ones that are coming up in 2015. The best example of cooperation by all 3, state, city, county, of course, is Phase 3 of Page. The forecast for the area of Page, westbound 364, peak hour volume between Kiska Road and Mid-Rivers Mall, the forecast for 2015 was that it was going to be 2,093. It's actually 4,147.
Wow.
So you can see use of Page has far exceeded what the experts predicted. And then there's another issue here. Not only we have state, federal, and local, but we got East-West Gateway. And East-West Gateway, of course, is made up of representatives from all the various counties in the region. It's the Metropolitan Planning Organization. To get money for roads and bridges, we have to get it approved down there. One of my real challenges down there, and John White, of course, is there as a member as well. John, I'm sure you agree, one of our biggest challenges is to convince people that we're not way out there. People in the city of St. Louis want to think, oh, we don't need to build roads, way out there in St. Charles County. But if you look at this map, you can see the area in the green is the part of the St. Louis region where if you live there, you are within a 45-minute commute of 75% of the jobs in the region.
Now, I'm asking them to update this map because I think that area in the red there, the Page corridor, after its completion, you're going to have almost the entire Golden Triangle in St. Charles is going to be in this green area. Now look, there's not a whole lot of green area over in Illinois, and there's very little in Jefferson County and none in Franklin County. So, we are not way out there. The city of St. Louis, the downtown, is very important to the region, but it's not the center economically of the region in terms of jobs. Zoning is another area. We have the city and the county working its own areas. This is something I'm very proud of. I think when we look at some of the problems in St. Louis County, and Ferguson and whatnot, and I think everybody knows that part of the problem is all the poor people live in one part of the county. And you can see that. You can see the value of the homes in the north. And of course, all the rich people live in the I-44 corridor there. Look at St. Charles County. We've got expensive houses. We got not expensive houses. We have them everywhere. And I think that's one of the best things we've got going for us. I think with that type of zoning, we're less likely to experience the kind of crime that they've experienced in St. Louis County. But again, that's a result of what you and the cities have done in terms of zoning. City, county, fire districts, ambulance districts, I don't need to tell you all about this. We all were confronted with this radio problem. This is a great example of cooperation. We all got together and did this, and it's something we should all be very proud of. Park systems, of course. All three levels of government have parks in St. Charles County. You can see most of the federal parks there along the Mississippi. The green are the county parks, and the red are the various state parks. Public officers, again, who makes the decision? The voters or the county executive and county council? All of these, 100 years ago, all these positions on the right were elected by the people. At various points in our history over the last 100 years, we decided that, that the auditor, instead of electing somebody who's popular, we ought to find somebody who's really good for numbers. So we've appointed the auditor. Chief medical examiner used to be a coroner. For 20 years, we had a chiropractor who was a coroner of St. Charles County. He was very popular, nice guy, Republican. But, did he really have the expertise to solve these difficult murders and crimes? So we got together and we decided instead of have a coroner, we'd have a medical examiner. Mary Case is a medical examiner. She does a great job. She does the same thing for everybody else. Circuit clerk. Instead of a popularity contest, we let the judges appoint somebody who actually knows something about how the courthouse operates. Now, if you don't like the job she's doing, you get to elect the judges, and they can fire her or not hire her back for the next term. Director of Corrections, that became a real problem because, as you know, we were getting sued all the time and still do by prisoners. But yet we had an elected sheriff who may or may not have any training whatsoever in running a jail. So, I don't know, 15 years ago we went ahead, or was it during the charter? The charter went ahead and gave that to a director of corrections. As you know, our director of corrections for the county now used to have the same job for the state. Director of finance, of course, used to be the county treasurer. We had some good ones. Had some that weren't so good. Now we've got a CPA in that position. Highway engineer, I think, is the most amazing. You still elect that position. Somebody decided, well, maybe we better have an actual engineer. So we started appointing that. Public administrator started the same way. And then, of course, we come to the police chief, and this is just the most recent example where we've decided that, okay, we need to appoint a professional. If they're not doing a good job, the public will come to us, and we will do something about it. The elected officials will still ultimately be responsible, but we'll appoint someone who has the proper training and credentials. Court of Appeals judges, we used to elect those. And then we had nonpartisan court plan in the 1940s. We had a county superintendent of education that was elected until the 1960s, when people decided, hey, wouldn't it be better to elect school boards and then have them look at the qualifications of the superintendent? So we went that route. And of course, what we've done with the police department is just the most recent example of that. School districts, going back to that earlier slide, that's the one thing we don't have any control over. Can't tell school districts what to do. What we can do, though, is we can enforce truancy. And I know I've talked to many of you about this individually. Let me just say it quickly. A lot of discussion about failing schools. What is the difference between Normandy School District and Francis Howell School District? Well, there's two things. First of all, Francis Howell spends $9,000 per student. Normandy spends $13,000 per student. At Francis Howell, 95% of the kids are there 90% of the time. At Normandy and Riverview, City of St. Louis, around 70% of the kids are there 90% of the time. Now, we can argue about whether the taxpayer should spend more money, whether we should have better teachers, or who's to blame, but everybody should be able to agree that if the kids aren't there, they can't learn. So I know Councilman Hollander was involved in some discussions we had last year with the city of St. Charles and our juvenile department. Were you involved in that? But we're making a larger effort right now to enforce these truancy laws, because that's really about all we can do. And then the final thing, red light cameras, okay? Again, just as the charter was able to take away from us the power to intervene in lawsuits involving annexation, the charter allows us, not us, but it allows the people to decide, hey, we don't want red light cameras, okay? And of course, you know that we're involved in a lawsuit on that. I think we'll prevail. But again, it's not a question, and this is what bothers me the most, and the main reason I put this whole presentation together. It's not a question of who has the power, the cities or the county. It's a question of who has the powers, the cities or the people of the county who vote for or against that charter amendment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. Does anybody have any questions? Thank you. Moving on to the consent agenda. Are there any items to be removed from the consent agenda?
Yes, sir. The bid on the election authority, had a quick question on that.
Do you have a motion? Is there a motion to remove that, Michael?
Yes, please.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is there a motion on any other items? Okay, go ahead.
Motion to approve the remaining balance.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right, the agenda has been, or the consent agenda has been approved. Now, I go on to the election equipment.
Yeah, and I apologize. Normally, I would have looked at this sooner, but for some reason, the numbers didn't jump out at me until just now. The second year, the estimated cost is for Atkins is $396,000. It's going to cover 4 elections, so obviously it should be higher than the years that we only have 2 elections. But I'm trying to figure out why it's 3.5 times as much as it's more than twice what when we only have 2 elections. Anybody have any idea? When we have 2, it's
Do you have any idea?
when we have 2, it's 114,000. So one would normally guess it would be around 250,000, 230,000 to have 4, but
Right. The majority of the cost you see in this bid has to do with the printing of the ballots, not services rendered for servicing 130 voting machines. In 2015, we're going to have 1 election, basically, Next year, we're planning on 3, April, August, and November, presidential election next year, and then in 2017, there would be probably one election again. So you're looking at 5 elections over the term of this contract. And the biggest thing in this total of $500 and some thousand, the biggest cost factor in these items is the actual printing of the ballots, because you've got a multitude of different ballot variations. It's not just one ballot that we send out countywide. You know, you guys have seen that, and the ballot formats are different in the different precincts. So the lion's share of these costs have to do with the printing of the ballots that you're going to need, regardless of whatever other services are being rendered by the vendor.
Okay. So in 2016, it's not just the number of elections or the number of ballots, but the number of different variances of the ballot?
Yeah, well, that happens in every election. I mean, you know, you've got different ballot styles that are going to be in different jurisdictions depending on
It still
the
doesn't
races.
really answer why in 2017 there's going to be 2 elections and it's going to be $114,000. There's going to be 4 elections in 2016, and it's
I don't know
3
about
times
17
the cost.
with 2 elections. I'm only thinking
That's what your
Yeah.
memo says.
I'm thinking there's 1 election in 17. I don't know if you.
One for sure.
One-
Right, and then
right.
there's a special listed as a possibility.
As a possibility, right. I'm looking at probabilities here that, you know, you can have a special election in a localized area of the county and not countywide.
Okay.
That's most probably the other special election you would have, which would be pretty inconsequential to the total here.
All right.
But just to let you know about what the Finance Department did in this bid, looking at this from a sole source, and it was recommended by the Director of Elections as being a sole source. We wanted to reach out to some of our sister counties in the state. So I had Kurt Mandernack, our purchasing director, contact Jackson County and St. Louis County and talk to the elections directors in those 2 counties, because anytime you get a sole source bid for this kind of money, you want to make sure that you're indeed sole sourcing with the right kind of logic. Historically, we have used the logic that Unison is the only licensed representative, or Henry Atkins and Sons is the only licensed representative for the Unison product in the state of Missouri. We have thought generally that makes sense, because if you have a problem with the machines, you can try to find somebody who can work on these machines, but come election day, if there's a problem on these machines, yeah, you better have the people who are there who can really carry the water if a problem does develop. You want the best trained people on hand there. But we checked with Jackson County and St. Louis County to see if they go with their vendors who provided the equipment, who they bought their equipment from, and they do in both cases, for exactly the same reason. They want to have the most stable and most uninterruptible chances of having a good election as possible here, and that's I know the election director's feelings in this too, and we concur with that.
When we selected the Unison system, was it disclosed at that time that Atkins was going to be the only ones that could service those?
We knew that at the time we purchased the machines, that Henry Atkins and Sons was the only vendor in the state that could service them. We actually, when we bought the machines, we actually, that was the second time that the purchase was before the county council. The first time that the recommendation for the machines was brought forward, Henry Atkins was the only machine vendor in the state of Missouri. County executive vetoed that, and the veto stood. The following year, we came back when there was another vendor in the state that could lend a competitive atmosphere to the bids. And the same equipment that we were buying the previous year for about $1,240,000, we bought for a little over $1 million. We saved $200 and some thousand by having that competitive spirit to the bid. But we did know at that time that Henry Atkins and Sons was the sole source agent for Unison in the state of Missouri.
The other competing one, did they have only one? Would they have been the only one to service their machines also? if we'd gone that route?
I don't know, because while they tendered a bid to us, they tendered a bid that was really older generation equipment, but Atkins and Sons didn't really know that at the time we put the bid out there. They didn't know what kind of bids we were going to receive. So we felt we got a very good result of the bid by getting a reduction in price of over $200,000.
And the only reason I'm really asking these questions is my antenna goes up whenever we do
Right.
sole source, especially for $500,000. It doesn't lend itself to, you can't really argue price very much at all. They're the only ones that are licensed to do it. So they're from a negotiation standpoint, they're certainly in the driver's seat.
I know that the election authority has undertaken some measures to get some of their personnel trained on the maintenance of these machines. And I would hope that over the course of time here, that the in-house component of maintenance becomes more formidable in that office, and we can hopefully rely less on outside vendors. But the physical printing of ballots and things like that, that's a good chunk of the number that you're seeing here, we're going to have to do regardless of who is maintaining our machines.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Cronin?
I just have a last comment. Could we not have ads do the support on the machines and investigate having another company, or when you're printing in-house ballots, since the ballots are the most of the cost, could we not save a bit of money that way? Also, does St. Louis or Jackson County print their own, or do they have Atkins print their ballots?
Well, I'll answer the second part of the question, Joe. Your first part of your question broke up, but it's my understanding that the ballots are printed by the outside vendors at Jackson and St. Louis counties.
I think the first part of his question was, can't they do the maintenance and the service work? Isn't that what you said, Joe?
Yeah, the maintenance and service work by Atkins, the technical portion. And anybody can print 9 by 11.5 piece or 9.5 piece of paper. Huh? But we don't buy a speed printer, do it in that.
Maybe. The ballots themselves are laid out in a very precise fashion. I don't think that our print shop in-house has the capability of formatting that, but certainly something we can look at. The way this bid is structured, they're in one-year increments, and what's on our radar screen right now is the April election, obviously, and I don't think we want to deviate from that. But if you'd like for us to look at some printing options on the ballots, I can certainly do so. The ballot cost is somewhere in the range of between 25 and 30 cents a ballot, if I recall correctly. And it's on a heavier stock paper, as you're aware of, as you have no doubt voted. But it's a heavier stock paper. But it's my understanding that the layout of these ballots is pretty critical, so that they're readable properly by the optical scan equipment.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Steve?
Yeah. Have we ever determined what happened in St. Louis County with they didn't have enough ballots printed? Was that just human error, do you know?
From what I have read, it was attributed to human error, yes.
Yeah.
Right.
And of course, the problem, I think these are all good ideas to explore, but the problem is, of course, it's if you're wrong. If you try something new and you're wrong,
Right.
it's not a problem you can fix real quickly on election day.
Right. I do think it makes very good sense for our folks that maintain our voting equipment in-house to become more professionally trained in that equipment. And I know Rich has already started that process. So it's something that I think he's moving out on, and I'd be certainly happy to pursue that further with him.
Is that all the questions?
I move for approval of the bid as submitted.
Second. Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion has been approved. Joe Cronin voted yes, too, if you guys haven't got that. Okay, moving on to bills for final passage. Bill number 4186.
Bill number 4186, an ordinance authorizing execution of an agreement between St. Charles County and the Old Monroe Fire Protection District for dispatching services for the District for Fire Protection calls for service originating within the boundaries of St. Charles County, as well as for the district's utilization of the county's emergency radio communication system.
Any questions or comments on Bill 4186? Seeing none?
An ordinance authorizing execution of an agreement between St. Charles County and the Old Monroe Fire Protection District for dispatching services for the District for Fire Protection calls for service originating within the boundaries of St. Charles County, as well as for the district's utilization of the county's emergency radio communication system. Councilmember Cronin?
Yes.
Councilmember Elam?
Yes.
Councilmember Brazel?
Yes.
Councilmember Hollander?
Yes.
Councilmember Klinghammer?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Bill 4186 is passed. Moving on to bills for introduction.
Bill number 4187, requested by Wayne Anthony, sponsored by council as a whole, an ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute contracts to award project care funds, approving a form contract for project care funds, and adopting a modified form contract for the Community Assistance Board Indigent Fund and the Homeless Fund.
Any questions or comments on Bill 4187? Seeing none?
Bill number 4188, and this needs to be read in its entirety, so I need to read the whole bill. Bill number 4188, requested by John Greisu, sponsored by council as a whole, an ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute a cost-share agreement with the Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission for the Gateway Green Light Program to commission an arterial management interface study in order to develop an alternate route plan for St. Charles County. Whereas this project will develop an alternate route plans that can be used during periods of severe congestion due to an incident on an interstate in St. Charles County, and whereas the County and Missouri Highways and Transportation Commission, MHTC, agree to share the cost to develop an alternate route plans for St. Charles County, and whereas an agreement provides that the county will contribute $50,000 and the MHTC will contribute $200,000 toward the preparation of the arterial management interface study, and whereas Section 70.220 RSMO authorizes an intergovernmental agreement between political subdivisions for the purposes herein set out, and whereas the arterial management interface study is county-wide and affects multiple jurisdictions and will be conducted consistently with the objectives of the Gateway Green Light Program. Now therefore be it ordained by the County Council of St. Charles County, Missouri as follows. Section 1, the county executive is hereby authorized to execute a cost-share agreement with the MHTC for the Gateway Green Light Program to develop alternate route plans for St. Charles County. Section 2, the agreement shall be substantially the same in form and content as that attached hereto as Exhibit A and incorporated herein. Section 3, compliance with all the terms of the agreement shall be the responsibility of the County Director of Transportation. Section 4, this ordinance shall be in full force and effect from and after the date of its passage and approval, and such agreement shall be valid upon the lawful execution of the agreement by the county executive and appropriate officials of the state of Missouri as required by Chapter 70 of the revised statutes of the state of Missouri.
Any questions or comments? Moving on.
Bill number 4189, requested by Steve Ellman and David Todd, sponsored by council as a whole, an ordinance authorizing the county executive and police chief to execute a memorandum of understanding with the United States Secret Service to provide reimbursement to the county for services provided to that agency.
Any questions or comments? Moving on.
Bill number 4190, requested by Steve Ellman, sponsored by council as a whole, an ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute intergovernmental agreements with the Missouri Department of Natural Resources for receipt of grants of up to $46,137 for tuck pointing and masonry rehabilitation on the St. Charles County Courthouse, now known as the Executive Office Building or Historic Courthouse, and amending the 2015 budget adopted by Ordinance 14-109 relating to receipt of said funds.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, moving on.
Bill number 4191, requested by Hope Woodson, sponsored by Joe Brazel, an ordinance amending the 2015 budget adopted by Ordinance 14-109 by transferring appropriations between budget categories in the Humane Donations Fund.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none?
Bill number 4192, requested by Steve Elman, sponsored by Joe Brazel, an ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute an agreement with the University of Missouri Extension Council of St. Charles County to provide educational programs and services at a cost to the county of $100,000.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none?
Bill number 4193, requested by Steve Elman, sponsored by Joe Brazel, an ordinance authorizing the county executive to execute a franchise agreement with the Union Electric Company doing business as Ameren, Missouri.
Any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, you'll note that there's no franchise attached yet. We do have one mostly worked out, and we're scheduled to meet with Ameren on the 12th to finalize it, so we'll have it to you at the end of the week.
Okay, thank you. Moving on.
Bill number 4194, requested by Hope Woodson and David Todd, sponsored by council as a whole, an ordinance authorizing the St. Charles County Police Department to enter into a search and rescue caregiver agreement contract using the Care Track wristband tracking system with qualified St. Charles County residents.
Any questions or comments on 4194? Seeing none, moving on.
Bill number 4195, requested by Steve Elman, sponsored by Joe Brazel, an ordinance authorizing execution of an agreement with the Industrial Development Authority of St. Charles County doing business as the Economic Development Council of St. Charles County, EDC, for the EDC to provide $55,000 of services for marketing, training, and education and technical assistance to businesses seeking financing from financial institutions.
Any questions or comments on 4195? That concludes bills for introduction. Moving on, are there any tabled bills to be removed from the table? Terry?
Yes, I believe that we should remove bill number 4155, and then I have a substitute bill.
But first, you just need to remove.
Second.
the-
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The bill is on the floor.
Okay, now I need to replace bill number 4155 with substitute bill 4155.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The substitute bill is on the floor.
Okay,
You got any questions? Oh, I got some questions. You want to start? Or?
go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I got some questions on this. Who on the substitute bill, is this, Steve, you want to come up?
Am I the substitute bill, or am I the one you pulled off?
Is he just,
You're all of the above.
You're both.
so is this thing, kind of give us a justice, just an executive summary if you could.
Well, when we were here last, we tabled the project because we've had quite a bit of consternation about giving up the 30-foot of right-of-way that the county had asked for. You know, we couldn't find anywhere, and I'll just give you a little background, a refresher, but MoDOT had said they have no planned projects on Highway N. We'd gotten a letter from them for that, and then they recanted 2 days later with the statement that they'd talked to the county, and the county said they needed that 30-foot. So then we came to the meeting here, and we tabled it in favor of having a meeting with Mr. Ellis, Mr. Meyer, Mr. Gravesu. We had that meeting, I think the week before Christmas, maybe. We had that meeting, and it was explained to us that the county is not asking for a 30-foot dedication, that by ordinance of a 2010 passage of an ordinance, that the new setback automatically became half of the right-of-way, half of the width of the master plan, which was done some time back, plus we had to have 25 feet on that. So in layman's terms, the right-of-way was 120 feet per the master plan, which meant there was 60 feet plus 25 feet, giving us an 85-foot setback from the original 30-foot right-of-way that is there now. I don't know if I explained that well.
85 foot from the center line?
From the center line of the road. There's 30 foot of right-of-way existing today, and then because of our development, we have to be 85 feet off the center line as opposed to the 30. And going back again, I'm sorry to go back, but going back again, one of our arguments was originally that one of the councilmen had said, you know, it's not unusual to ask for a dedication of right-of-way with a new development, and we agreed with that. But this is something I do quite often, And typically, it's 10 feet, it's 15 feet for a turn lane because a city or a county has road plans or road ideas and plans established. In this case, part of my consternation was that there are no plans established and nobody has any idea what we're going to do with that. So to get to the point, after that meeting, we were basically of the impression that there was nothing we could do. It's an ordinance based on some master plan that somebody came up with a long time ago. We went back to our plans and put an 85-foot setback. It completely changed our plans from what we originally provided, but that's where we're at today.
I got a question for either Robert or Harold. Harold, at what time did the county council come up with an ordinance or by our legislation to mandate an 85-foot setback from the center of the line?
That's in, and I can't tell you the date of the amendment. Okay. I can't tell you the date of the amendment without going online, but it was sometime back in the 2000s. I think either Robert or John may have the answer. I, sitting here, do not have that answer, but this is a well-established ordinance that has been on the books for quite a while. I understand that the plat now before you meets that requirement. I think what is before you now is a slightly amended plat.
Correct.
Mr. Marion has gotten additional property at the west end of the property that gives him more room for his development. The setback designated on the new plat completely complies with 405-415P. And what I think is now before the council is an amended plat with a revised request for a variance from the requirement in the UDO to have all lots within a subdivision front on an internal subdivision street. As I understand your application, what you're asking for now is to have a cross-access easement for lots 1 and 2.
That is correct. Also, basically, the major change that we made was to take that setback from 55 feet, or whatever it was, 55 feet to 85 feet, so that added 30 feet. And then the 30-foot to the west, I don't know if we've talked about it before, but there was a 30-foot strip to the west that we all had assumed from the beginning was the future Dwello Road. As we turned out, it was a title issue. We're going all the way back to the subdivision that was built there. We've now cleaned that up with a quitclaim deed and whatnot. So to answer your question, yes, basically what we did was back that up to 85 feet from 55 feet, and that also created a situation where we moved the building from one side of the property to the other side of the property and tried to make it longer and more narrow.
So the swap,
we did change the size of the building as well.
The 30 feet of the swap that you got, did you purchase that property, or how'd you end up getting the 30 feet?
No, I did not purchase it. It was part of a quitclaim. Originally, Burkemper had the property, developed the entire property. It was assumed off of the original survey that 30-foot strip was part of a dedication for Dwello to be a future part.
Right.
And through the conversations with Mr. Ellis and me and my attorney and all that, we realized that that property was kind of caught in limbo. Mr. Burkemper still owned it, even though his company was defunct, and or that company in particular was no longer around. So we had the title company go back to him, and he signed a quitclaim deed saying it should have been part of the original property.
Okay.
That's
My
title
question,
cleanup.
well, I'm confused, and I apologize, I was out of town when we had the first meeting, but I'm trying to figure out, I guess, Robert, you can answer this question. On the 85-foot setback, well, back to you, Steve, when you purchased a property, was that a dedicated 85-foot?
Absolutely not.
Okay, so,
We had 30-foot of right-of-way, and then our property started.
okay, Robert, my question is how can the county, or did we pass an ordinance, if he owned the property without the dedicated easement on his property, how can the county mandate an 85-foot setback without paying for the property?
we have an additional setback requirement along arterial roads. And that's for two benefits. It's for the benefit of being able to provide for future transportation, but it's also for the benefit of the property owner as well, because at some point when a roadway is widened to meet modern standards and carry the traffic, that's going to carry the traffic by this property and be beneficial for this commercial property, additional right-of-way is going to need to be purchased. So this helps preserve the corridor, the additional setback, but also...
But my question is when did the county specifically pass an ordinance? Is this an arbitrary number, this 85 foot from the center line, or is it decided by the planning, who decides it's 85 foot from the center line?
It's specified in the master plan, and the master plan has a map that shows, it designates all of the future roadways by arterial classification.
Are these state highways mostly, or are these county roads, or are these all kinds of roads? What kind of roads are these? Because this is Highway N we're speaking about, right? Is this
Yes.
the,
Yes, state and county.
So is this a MoDOT mandate or a county mandate?
The county has adopted this through our master plan in order to preserve those transportation corridors. So it's something that we've adopted to ensure that we can move people around the county in the future and not have those corridors blocked someday.
But if MoDOT put the letter out saying there's not going to be any kind of improvements, there's no scheduled improvements, then why are we taking his ground?
A couple of things. First, the master plan calls for future development out of this area that this roadway is going to need to serve, but also John Grimes, who can tell you more about the specific plans that are underway for improvement of this corridor. I think, for instance, there's a roundabout that's proposed at or near the intersection of Duella Road and the highway in front of this property. And there's going to be improvements in that area. John can tell you about more specifics on that.
Well, I would like to know about that, but I also want to know, what I want to understand is, did this county council specifically pass an ordinance that states it's an 85-foot setback from the center line?
County council, yes, passed an ordinance that specifies the setbacks from the center line for arterial roadways in the master plan. And it provides specific footage, yes.
When that was done, was that given to us in a big packet of UDO changes, or did we specifically have an ordinance on that? Because I don't remember that.
I don't know offhand.
He wasn't here.
Yeah, he wasn't here. Yeah, I'm not blaming you. I just want to find out, because when I was having discussions with them, it doesn't seem fair to the property owner, for one, that we're taking his ground without paying him for it. And it seems like it's just not right, especially if there's not a forecasted or scheduled improvement for that part of the highway. And I think that's a problem. I think it's wrong. But I'm not telling you that specifically, because you're just doing what you're supposed to do. But I'm trying to find out if I was part of the problem when I passed the ordinance 10 years ago or whenever it was, because I specifically do not remember that. And that's what concerns me, actually. Because I'm told on another state highway it's a 75-foot setback, and you're saying it's an 85-foot setback, so that's which is it?
It depends on the future roadway design. There's some highways that are going to be 2 lanes, some are 4 lanes, some will be 4 lane with a center median. It just depends on the future concept for each particular roadway. And that depends in part on future planning for how many houses are going to be in certain areas and how much traffic it's going to be carrying. I would say you mentioned taking ground, although this would preserve that future area for future purchase. So we're not talking about...
no, but you're taking his ground. He doesn't get to use it, therefore you're taking his ground. He can't use it the way he thought he was going to be able to use it when he purchased it. And it's just, to me, I have a problem with that.
Can I address something too? I understand what you're asking, I believe, and you're asking, did they bring a plan in front of you and you vote for Highway N to be 85-foot right-of-way? The ordinance says, and Mr. Ellis can probably address this better than I can, but when we sat down and went through the ordinance says that it's half of the future master plan, basically, plus 25 feet. So if that master plan, like through my area, calls for 120-foot right-of-way for Highway N, then it's 60 foot plus 25 feet. That's how we get to the 85. So you as councilman, when you voted on that, did not have a hard number of 75 feet, 85 feet, 35 feet. It was whatever that plan turns out to be, plus 20, half of that plus 25 feet. Did that answer your question a little better?
Yeah, and that sounds very complicated for somebody
Mr.
trying
Chairman?
to purchase some land.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Steve.
Can I ask Robert a question here? Sure. Robert, you weren't here, and really neither was I, back in the, when the housing.
So who was here?
I'm guilty. I was here.
Back when the, you know, they were building houses everywhere and everybody was coming in. We had all these subdivisions and everything. But this really, there's nothing new about, the numbers may have changed, but there's nothing new about the concept of requiring a right-of-way like this, is there?
No, it's been something that's been kind of the backbone of future planning for roadways in the county for a long time.
And we frustrate landowners all the time by requiring 5-foot side yard setbacks and requiring other setbacks and saying that the lot has to, you know, have so many square feet. I mean, that's kind of what zoning is, right? It's infringing upon the absolute right of a landowner to do whatever he wants to on a piece of property. It isn't just a variance of that same principle.
It is, because even without future additional right-of-way setback, there's always a zoning setback of 25 feet or 30 feet or whatever that is.
Yeah.
And people might say, well, you can't use that area, but there are certain reasons to have that setback. Also, I'd like to say that it also protects the property owner as well, because when the future roadway does go through there, imagine if that future roadway had to take out someone's parking lot, you know, of someone's business. That would really hurt the business itself.
Well, but, you know, you're getting practical. I'm being theoretical here. The fact is that zoning takes away people's property rights all the time in the name of the greater good. And whether it's a side yard setback or a minimum number of square feet to build a house, I mean, all those things basically limit what otherwise would be a person's unbridled ability to use their ground however they want to. Mr. Chairman, can I ask Don a question?
Sure, yeah.
Don, well, there's another aspect here, I think, when this, you were trying to explain to me the other day.
The council will remember that at a previous meeting, we brought up this issue that at the time of the rezoning, this was in contention, and Mr. Goss, who was the attorney for Mr. Burkemper, indicated that they would give up that right-of-way. And this zoning was established in large measure because of their willingness to do so. The second thing I'd like to point out is that these property owners are not being asked to do anything differently than the other property owners along Highway N, which, as Joe knows, is becoming very congested. There's a lot of traffic moving in and out of there. And maybe MoDOT doesn't have any intentions of doing anything right now, but we certainly are going to be pushing them to do so. Having said all that, and in spite of the fact that John and Craig had not seen the substitute bill until tonight, they assure me that what's been agreed to is okay with them. So, Joe, I think to answer your question, I think the council had reassurances at the time of the rezoning, or they perhaps would not have granted that rezoning, that this right-of-way was going to be donated.
I agree with that, but the only difference is here is it's one thing if this gentleman was going to buy the property and he knew that going into it, if there was some kind of a dotted line or an easement or something that said this easement comes back 85 feet and therefore the value of that 85 feet to him is useless. But it didn't do that. He bought the property after the fact. They changed the easement. Is that correct? And that's the big difference. That's the huge difference. If the government wants to establish easements, that's fine. I get it. I understand how it works. But you can't do it after someone's already purchased that property, has it, the plot plans planned and zoned, and then you're giving up property and you get nothing in return for that property. It's just not right. Now, I understand the easement. I get the whole theory. I understand that. But not after the fact. And I think that's the difference. That's all.
I would like to address something too. That's been brought up twice, that Mr. Goss, when he got his zoning for the Burkemper development, said that we would dedicate that. Mr. Goss has never represented me, and I respect him a lot. He's a great attorney, but they got the benefit of the rezoning and passed on the problem to the next guy. So whenever that was sold, whenever all that stuff was done, they sold that property as a commercial piece of property with that already done. And that's just the second time I've heard that, and we never had any involvement in that when that took place, just FYI.
Are there any other questions? Does anybody else?
Mr. Chairman?
Oh, Joe.
Does Mr. Marion, can he live with this plan? Does he want us to approve this?
His question was, are you?
I think,
he means the substitute bill.
well, and actually Ryan Leahy's here. I'm in a pretty interesting place because this plat requires not only my signature and my partner's signature, but it also requires a third party, the person that owns the 6 acres next door to me. Ryan Leahy's here tonight representing them. The last we understood was we had no options. So we went back and changed our plans, changed our access, changed the size of our building, moved our building to make that project work the way we could get it approved in the county. If there's another option for that, I would like to exercise that other option. If there's no option and this is all I can do, then it's all I can do. Well, I have to move forward, and that is another thing. We started this process in November, and when we tabled it, the night we tabled it, I said, well, we've got the time in our timeline right now to deal with this, but we're starting to pinch our timelines where we're either going to have to make a decision to take an inferior project as whatever it is, or we're going to have to move on and do something else.
Well, I apologize. The reason, you and I spoke today.
Sure.
And then Harold and you and I spoke.
And we had the meeting.
And that was back before
Sure.
Christmas. And I had thought that everything was good, and I thought that
Yes.
everything was satisfactory. And then, so that, and I know that the time is of the essence as well. So, and I don't want to squash a deal that's been, a lot of time's been spent on either,
Right.
So, but I'm disturbed by some of the things we talked about.
We're
And so-
disturbed by it, but up until today, we were told that was our only option.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Steve.
Mr. Marion?
Yes, sir.
Can I ask Mr. Marion?
Yes, go ahead.
Have you done developments before?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so are you, the other option here was when you entered into a contract to buy this property, that as a contingency in that contract was to get a plat acceptable to yourselves.
Yes, sir.
So you could have come in here and gone through this process
Could have.
while that contract was pending. If you didn't like what the ordinance required, you could have said no to the owner, no, we can't, we're not going to buy this.
Very true.
So you would agree that is
Absolutely
the other
true.
option here, and
Yeah.
maybe with hindsight, you could have done that.
That is absolutely true. And I agree, we could have gone through that whole process while under contract, or at least offered that to the seller. We did go through and look at the zoning and what we thought the setbacks were. It was not until we submitted.
The zoning was fine. It's just until you have a plat, you just don't know. And I'm sorry we didn't have that discussion before you closed on the property. It would have been much better for everybody.
Absolutely. And I won't pretend to be the best developer in the world. I've only done a couple pieces of property.
Live and learn, baby.
And this is a development that's for me personally. This is a passion project, so.
The next one, come and talk to us early.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying, this is not something I'm building to sell to somebody. This is my personal,
And I'm not saying that there is any kind of ill intent here or anything
I
like
agree.
that. Everybody's intentions were good. It's just that I think that some of the concerns you brought to me are valid. I just, there's been a lot of effort put into this to this point, and so it's like, it's your property, and I would say that, and I agree with both sides, but I do have concerns about what you had to go through. So you can either, I sponsored the bill. I mean, you can pass it and then talk about doing an amendment to it? I don't know, Harold. I mean, what do you, Steve, what do you want to do?
Well, I met with the people that are involved earlier this evening, knowing that some of this might come up. The real concern with my other partners is we table this project tonight, we work on something that makes more sense for us, and then 2 weeks, a month later, we're right back in the same spot we were tonight. That's really the concern. So I guess I'm saying, I feel like we're between a rock and a hard spot. We either approve this now and move forward with our project, or we take the chance of taking another month's worth of time and being back in the same spot.
That's your, I'm sorry. Mike.
No, go ahead, Mike.
I guess that's kind of your gamble at
I
this
guess
point.
so.
I mean, I guess you need to weigh, and I haven't heard how much this really affects the project that you originally laid out versus, you know, what it is now. If it's a little bit inferior, that's one thing, but if it's, you know, if it makes it borderline, you know, a successful project, you know, do you want to go forward or not?
Chris? That didn't make it easier.
Are there,
It's right on your
are there-
shoulders, man.
I mentioned earlier, there's a third party that is not involved with us, that owns the 6 acres next door, that does have to sell or sign the plat, or we can't get it approved anyway with him, and he'd like to speak if that's okay.
No, it is absolutely fine. It's just that,
My name's Ryan Leahy. I own the property, I guess, on the east side. I've heard some interesting discussions tonight, some good comments and some not-so-good comments. I understand dedicating some right-of-way for the greater good of the community and things of that nature, but at the end of the day, you know, call it right-of-way, dedication, reservation, whatever you want. We own the corner, and it's about 5.2 acres. And if you take this, you know, what is it, 30 feet or 55 feet?
Depends on how you measure it.
You know, we're talking a considerable amount of money. We have a national retailer looking at the corner right now. And, you know, I don't think that it's fair to take this ground, you know, buy this land grab. And, you know, I understand that the county's paying landowners down, what is it, Dwella Road, Interstate Drive, and other parts of the county. So, you know, by taking this, by right-of-way, dedication, reservation, whatever you want, without compensation to us is not fair. So I ask you to take that into consideration. Thank you.
I get it. I mean, that's why, you know, we're having this conversation. It's just that you put us in a spot. I mean, we're all in a spot because this is a complicated bill. It's got a lot of strikes in it. There's been a lot of energy put on it on both sides.
Yes, sir.
And I really wish that some of this conversation was had a couple weeks ago, you know. Like I said, I could have looked into it more, but I thought you guys had it all worked out. So I don't know how to answer your question because I don't know what you're saying. I don't know where you want to go with it from there. And I don't know how complicated you want to go make it get with the county. So I don't know, Harold. I don't know what, if you're looking for an answer from me, I can't really give you one. Mike, what do you think?
I mean, I'll approve this bill as it's submitted tonight if that's what you guys want us to do. If you don't, then, you know, go back to the drawing board and try to draft something else that will satisfy the future needs for the road. And I agree with what Mr. Bamer was saying also, and Mr. Elman. The increased traffic flow on N is certainly there. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist from our perspective to see the need for looking into the future and knowing that we're going to need to do something to that road. And if we have the ability to do it now, before something gets built, it makes a whole lot more sense than trying to shoehorn it in later, or trying to.
I think that's what, and we have two different objectives, so let me state that. His objective is to buy the property and develop it in the future. Mine is develop it now. And in Ryan and I's conversation, I think that's what Ryan's trying to say is his project's not set by square foot, by size of building, by where the driveways go, all that. He is okay with the county taking the property, but it should be at a cost. I'm in a different situation. My situation is my project changes with every foot we go back and forth, if that helps.
Right.
I really think that it's up to you. I think if we, call this vote now, I think this is gonna pass, okay? So it's up to you whether you can live with this, or if you want to take an opportunity to go another month and see
Can
what
we have a
happens.
few minutes to step outside and discuss this? Would that
The
be
only
okay?
thing I would suggest is, if I don't know how complicated you want to make it, however, the next council meeting would be at the end, in like 2 weeks or something like that, 3 weeks. And so if you're going to try to get it all put together by then, I know this is costing you money every time you guys redraw it and engineer it and everything. So, but if hopefully it would make sense that the county would agree with it, with even, fair, but I don't.
Okay.
I can't tell you what will happen at the end.
I know that.
Yeah.
And I do appreciate, I want to say, I've talked endless hours with Robert, with John, with Mr. Ellis. They've been great to work with, so thank you for that. Could we have 5 minutes to just kind of?
I guess one other thing real quick, I will remind the council that we were able to do projects like Page because there was a long-term effort to preserve the corridor. And, this, it's not the magnitude of Page, obviously, but I think we owe it to our community also to look into the future and say, where are we going to need these roads?
I
would go take your 5 minutes while you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Chairman, before they leave, since time does seem to be an important factor here, I just want to make it clear that if you all decide to adopt a substitute, I will sign it.
Yeah, guys, just, 5 minutes, and we're still going to talk about, I guess we can.
Mr. Cronin's waving his finger.
Oh, Mr. Cronin, yes.
Could we not approve this, then allow them to come back, some changes down the road to decide? The second thing is, I drove that area before I left. There is a cemetery on the other side of the road that's going to drastically affect, to widen that road, which way they got to go towards this gentleman.
That was about as broken of a comment as I think we could possibly
Joe,
get.
unfortunately,
Joe,
we
we're
only
getting
heard
about every third word of
that
what
you
you're
said.
saying.
I'm sorry, try again.
Exactly. We're getting about every third word of what you're saying.
Okay. Could we not approve tonight and amend later?
Harold, can you do an amendment after the bill's passed?
This is no, you can't amend a bill after it's
After it's passed, it has to be a new
But
bill.
you could amend a plat after it's passed. Alternatively, because all plats have to comply with the provisions of the UDO's zoning setbacks, there are other procedures for varying some of those more minute requirements of Chapter 405 through a variance process.
Well,
So.
I think that.
I can understand his jokes sooner than I could Harold.
The point is, if, as we've expressed, we think this is a growing area. We think eventually this road will need to be. But if for some reason the road were to go somewhere else, could they come back in and said, hey, you're really not going to need this now? You could amend the plat.
But as Mr. Leahy just said, they're looking at a national retailer coming in on that corner. Well, depending on what type of national retailer that is, you could be pulling in a whole bunch more traffic into that area. So aren't we going to be,
Yeah.
I mean, I want to make everybody as happy as we can make them, but as John pointed out, you weren't here for that meeting, but when he was kind of talking about the plat, and like Mike said earlier, even though there's no firm plan as to what's going through there right now, you go back and you look 20 years ago at that whole passage where Page is at now, and there was nothing there.
I think
if they would have given up on some of that, we could have gotten into a lot of trouble.
If you have a national retailer, they're not going to go on a highway like this unless they have some idea that there is some plan to expand it if they have to someday.
Well, that would accelerate the time plan as to what you're going to do that expansion. If you put somebody who's going to bring a lot more traffic down that
we've
road.
been talking to MoDOT. We want to do some things on Highway N now, and they
Right.
refuse to even consider it because they don't have any money.
We can just print more, can't we? Just kidding, it was a Washington joke, and we're killing time. They're doing phone a friend right now, so we're just killing time until we can get there.
I don't think printing money was one of the powers that Steve outlined in the
That's not
earlier
given to us in
presentation.
the charter?
That's one's exclusively federal.
It's exclusively federal.
Mr. Cronin wants to say something.
Oh, hey, Joe.
Yeah, Mr. Cronin.
There is a cemetery across the street from this proposed development that will affect the widening of that road when the time comes.
I think the question at hand here is, can we change setbacks after the property has been purchased without the knowledge, without it being on the deed, or without it being on the plot plan? To me, that's the question.
Yes, we can, and that's why most developers have a contingency in their contract that they get an acceptable plat. And if they don't like
Before they buy
if
it.
they don't like the plat that you all approve, they don't go through with the land transaction.
But that's what didn't he say that when it was platted, it didn't show the easement on it? It wasn't a dedicated easement.
No, it wasn't platted. The rest
plat
of the
is what's happening
subdivision
right now.
was platted.
But the zoning regs were in place at the time of sale, and all sales are taken subject to applicable zoning.
Let me ask you this, Harold. If this passed tonight, would you be able to amend the verbiage of the master plan to address the setback?
I don't think you need to do anything that drastic. The master plan, which this council approved by ordinance, and which designated Highway N as a thoroughfare with a future right-of-way of 120 feet. That master plan is a piece of general multi-jurisdictional county-wide transportation planning, and you don't want to tinker with that. There are adjustments to the particular property and to the particular development that can be made through the zoning process, even after approval of a plat.
The jury's back.
The 30-foot reservation for the right-of-way is one thing. The 25-foot front yard setback is another.
This other guy back there.
Go ahead, Steve.
Well, we talked about it, and we don't want to delay the project any further, so we'd ask that you approve the project as it's in front of you tonight.
Okay, that's what we'll do. Sorry for your troubles,
That's
because
okay.
it confuses me as well, and
I do appreciate everybody's looking into it. A lot of people spend a lot of time trying to figure it out, and quite honestly, when we met with Mr. Ellis, I think that was the first time that Mr. Ellis pointed out to us, it wasn't a right-of-way dedication, it was a setback issue. And, you know, up until then, we'd spent a lot of time trying to figure out where this came from. So, thank you.
all right, thank you.
Call the question.
Call the question, or go ahead and vote.
In ordinance of the County of St. Charles, Missouri, approving the preliminary plat of the LMC subdivision. Councilmember Cronin?
Yes.
Councilmember Elam?
Yes.
Councilmember Brazel?
Yes.
Councilmember Hollander?
Yes.
Councilmember Klinghammer?
Yes.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Bill has passed. Substitute Bill 4155. Are there any other table bills? Seeing none. Are there any miscellaneous acknowledgements or comments?
Mr. Chairman, I would note, and I apologize for not doing it when you were going through the bills, but the bill tonight for the grant to be received from the Missouri Department of Natural Resources is in fact the completion of the exterior of this building on the renovation, and it'll take care of the skyward-facing balconies and the other things we didn't have the money to do. It's very unusual to get 2 grants from them in a row, and I really have to thank Ryan Graham over in the Parks Department who worked really hard on getting that.
Yeah, Joanne did a great job, guys. Just so you know, she really did a lot of work on this. The building has been almost 100% rush restored, and they replaced stones and did all kinds of really neat stuff. And the only things that couldn't get done were the viewing decks, the balconies, And they do know how to work, but there just was not enough money in the budget. So they're going to do all the balconies now. So the building will be 100% completed, and they're doing a really nice job. So good job, Joanne, on that.
The irony of that, Mr. Chairman, is that when Governor Blunt set up this whole program, he did the press conference right outside here.
That's good, yeah. Yeah, it's turning out nice. Any other comments? Motion?
Motion to dismiss.
Second, we are adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Dismissed. Dismissed.
No, I don't.